Tractate Menachos, page 68a, top of the page. Mitoch shelo hitarta lo, ela al yedei kituv zacho hu. Since before the Omer you permitted one to harvest the crop only by picking it by hand and not in the typical manner, he will remember the prohibition and refrain from eating it. With regard to searching for leaven, there is no reminder. Amar le Abaye, tinach ketzira, techina v'hal kodo ma'ik l'meimao. Abaye said to him, this works out well in explaining Rabbi Yehuda's opinion with regard to picking the grain. But with regard to grinding and sifting, what can be said? Apparently, it is permitted to perform these acts in a typical manner. Why then is there no concern that one may eat the grain at that stage? Ha loikashia, tchina, berichaya, dida, harkada, al gabe nafa. The Gemara responds, this is not difficult, as one also performs grinding in an atypical manner. One must grind the grain before the sacrificing of the Omer with a hand mill, not with a mill powered by an animal or by water. Likewise, sifting is performed unusually not in the interior of the sifter. Instead, it is performed on top of the sifter. Since all of these actions are performed in an atypical manner, there is no concern that one might eat the grain. Pesa shulachi lishar yeketziro titznan koitrin pesa shulachin shebe'amakim aval lo gorshin ma'ikle meimao. The Gemara raises another difficulty from the case of a field that requires irrigation, where typical harvesting is permitted. As we learned in Mishnah 71a, one may harvest grain from an irrigated field and from fields in the valleys, as their grain ripens long before the Omer is offered or is sacrificed. But one may not pile the produce. The use of the term one may harvest indicates that the grain was harvested in a typical manner, not by hand. In this case, what can be said? Why doesn't Rabbi Yehuda issue a decree lest someone eat from the new grain? Amar Abaye Chadash. Rather, Abaye said, this difference between the cases of the Omer and leaven is not based on the manner in which one harvests, grinds, or sifts. Instead, the reason for the different rulings is that one distances himself from new grain, as it is prohibited to eat the new grain all year until the Omer is sacrificed. By contrast, one does not distance himself from leavened bread, as eating it is permitted during the rest of the year. Therefore, he is more likely to eat leavened bread unwittingly. Amar Rabbi de Rabbi Yehuda, ad Rabbi Yehuda kashia, de Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan le kashia. Rava said, does the contradiction between one statement of Rabbi Yehuda and the other statement of Rabbi Yehuda pose a difficulty, while the contradiction between one statement of the rabbis and the other statement of the rabbis does not pose a difficulty? There is also an apparent contradiction between the opinion of the rabbis, who claim that the sages issued a decree with regard to new grain, but did not issue a decree with regard to leaven. Rather, Rava said that the contradiction between one statement of Rabbi Yehuda And the other statement of Rabbi Yehuda is not difficult, as we resolved it previously. The contradiction between one ruling of the rabbis and the other ruling of the rabbis is also not difficult. The rabbis maintain that there is no need to issue a decree prohibiting searching for leaven after it becomes prohibited. As with regard to one who himself is seeking out leaven, specifically in order to burn it, will he eat from it? By contrast, in the case of new grain, he is processing the grain and preparing it for consumption. Consequently, there is a concern that he might eat it unwittingly. Rav Ashi Amar, Rabbi Yehuda lekashya kemach koli tenan. Rav Ashi said the contradiction between one statement of Rabbi Yehuda and the other statement of Rabbi Yehuda is not difficult, as the difficulty can be resolved in another manner. As we learned in the Mishnah, that the markets of Jerusalem were filled with flour of parched grain. It is permitted to prepare only such foods before the Omer, as they are not eaten without further preparation. Therefore, there is no concern lest one eat it unwittingly before the Omer offering is sacrificed. The Gemara rejects this interpretation, and this statement of Rav Ashi is in error. Baruta. Maybe baruta is like taut. Tauta. I don't know. It's an error. Taus is an error, so barus, taus, maybe. Just a thought. Anyway, the statement of Rav Ashi is, they say baruta, an error, as this suggestion can easily be refuted. Oh, come on. These alerts. Okay. As this suggestion needs to be refuted, that works out well with regard to the status of the grain at the point that it was processed into flour of parched grain and forward, as there is no concern that perhaps one will come to eat it, but with regard to its status initially, until it became parched grain, what can be said? There must have been a certain point when the grain kernels were edible before they were transformed into parched grain. Why is there no concern that one might eat the kernels at this earlier stage? If you would say that here too the grain is distinguished by the atypical manner in which it is harvested through picking by hand in accordance with the earlier statement of Rabbah, nevertheless, with regard to the difficulty raised to Rabbah's opinion, from the case of an irrigated field which is permitted to be harvested in the typical manner, what can be said? Rather, the Gemara rejects this explanation and concludes that this statement of Rav Ashi is in error. Okay, that's the Talmud. Now, new Mishnah. Zog daily Mishnah, Mishgor Oimer, Huta Chodosh Miyad, Rochoik Mutorin, Machtos Hayom Ulialon, Mishachor Beis HaMikdash, Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Shehe Yoim Heniv Kulo Yosu. The Mishnah says, from the moment that the Omer offering was sacrificed, the produce of the new crop was permitted immediately. For those distant from Jerusalem, the new crop is permitted from midday and beyond. From the time that the temple was destroyed, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted that the day of waving the Omer, the 16th of Nisan, is entirely prohibited, meaning one may partake of the new crop only the next day. Amar Rav Yehuda, V'halo min ha'Torah hu asu, shenemar, ad etzem hayom hazeh. מפני מה הרוחק מותרים מחצוס היום לאלון מפני שאין יודעים שאין בית דין מייצלין בוי. Rabbi Yehuda said, but isn't it forbidden by Torah law, as it is stated, and you shall eat neither bread nor parched grain nor fresh grain until this selfsame day? until you have brought the offering of your God. Leviticus 23:14. This means that the new crop is prohibited on the day of the waving unless permitted by sacrifice of the offering. And if so, for what reason is it permitted for those distant to eat the new crop from midday and beyond when the temple is standing? It is due to the fact that they know that the members of the court are not indolent in its sacrifice, and certainly by midday the sacrifice of the Omer offering has been completed. That's the Mishnah. Now the Talmud. The Gemara says, Rav Shmuel Amud Ish. Okay, where were we? The Talmud, starting the Talmud, Rav Shmuel, the Tavayu, Bizman Shebeis HaMikdash Kayam, Omer Matir, Bizman She'ein Beit HaMikdash Kayam, Heitir Mizrach Matir. The opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, as presented in the Mishnah, is that after the destruction of the temple, the new crop is prohibited throughout the entire 16th of Nisan by Torah law. With regard to the dissenting opinion that the new crop is permitted on the 16th of Nisan, Rav and Shmuel both say when the temple is standing, the sacrifice of the Omer offering permits the new crop. When the temple is not standing, the illumination of the eastern horizon on the 16th of Nisan permits it. My time, the Gemara asks, what is the reason? The two verses are written with regard to the new crop. More precisely, there are two clauses in the same verse. And you shall eat neither bread nor parched grain nor fresh grain until this self-same day, until you have brought the offering of your God. Leviticus 23:14, it is written that the new crop is prohibited until you have brought the offering. And it is also written that the new crop is prohibited only until the self-same day. How so? How can these clauses be reconciled? Kan bisman shebeis hamikdash kayam. Kan bisman she'ein beis hamikdash kayam. The Gemara answers here, when the verse permits the new crop only after the sacrifice of the Omer offering, it is referring to the period when the temple is standing. There, when the verse permits the new crop immediately upon the 16th of Nisan, it is speaking of the period when the temple is not standing. Rabbi Yochanan v'Reish Lakish Torah Zarvayu Filu Bizman Shebeis HaMikdash Kayam Heir Mizrach Matir v'Hachasiv Haviachem LeMitzvah. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both say, even when the temple is standing, the illumination of the eastern horizon permits the new crop. The Gemara asks, but isn't it written until you have brought the offering? Which indicates that the new crop is not permitted at daybreak, but only after the Omer offering is sacrificed. The Gemara answers, the verse means that one should wait to partake of the new crop until after the Omer offering is brought ab initio in order to fulfill the mitzvah of the optimal fashion, but nevertheless is permitted at daybreak. The Gemara raises another difficulty. The Mishnah states, from the moment that the Omer offering was sacrificed, the produce of the new crop was permitted immediately. This indicates that the new crop is not permitted at the illumination of the eastern horizon. The Gemara again answers that the Mishnah means that one should wait to partake of the new crop until after the sacrifice of the Omer offering, in order to fulfill the mitzvah in the optimal fashion, but it is permitted at daybreak. HaOmer haya matzir b'medina u'shtei lechem hamikdash le'mitzvah. The Gemara raises yet another difficulty from the next Mishnah, 68b. Sacrifice of the Omer offering would permit consumption of the new crop in the rest of the country, outside the temple, and the 2 loaves offering permitted the sacrifice of the new crop in the temple. Here too the Gemara answers, one should wait to partake of the new crop until after the sacrifice of Omer, offering in order to fulfill the mitzvah in the optimal fashion. Okay, this is 68a. We'll stop here.